I have a resource attached to this lecture, which is a spreadsheet that looks like this. And what it's going to help you do is identify what your specialization is going to be, because as I've mentioned, being specialized is the single clearest strategic direction that a professional service firm can take, including all digital marketing agencies, essentially. So one thing that I want to highlight before I get into the details of this, and this is very important, when you are small, you have to make a very important strategic decision, which is your specialization and who your target customers are going to be. However, you can be agile with this and you can be experimental with this. So for example, you do not need to change your entire website and say, we're only going to cater to this one target customer group. No. One way that you can choose to specialize is when you're sending cold emails, you're going to send a cold email campaign that is dedicated to a specific target customer or a particular problem that you solve or a particular service that you offer or a particular business model that you want to promote. You don't need to overhaul absolutely everything that you have already to focus on a specialty. You can come up with a proof of concept through an advertising campaign, through an email campaign, through a direct mail campaign, before you decide that you want to overhaul all of your marketing collateral. So decide on a specialty, try it out, but be agile and be flexible, because what you may find is you went with one specialty, and let's say it's massage therapists. And then you realize that massage therapists really don't have the money to pay for digital marketing services. Okay, let's change. Let's go with maybe naturopaths this time. Or let's go with doctors. Or let's go with plastic surgeons and go a little bit narrower than doctors at large. Don't think that because you're making a strategic choice that you need to invest like thousands of dollars in changing everything, changing your office signage, etc. No, start small, start nimble, be agile, but be focused in your strategic direction. So this is what the blank spreadsheet looks like. Now what I'm going to do is show you what it might look like as you start to fill it out. So it's a brainstorming session. And what you're going to do is start with target customer. And you're going to put in an idea. So an idea might be dentists. Why dentists? Well, maybe you had some experience with groups of different customers. Maybe some were manufacturers, some were dentists, maybe some were not-for-profits, some were educational institutions, and maybe you just found that you enjoyed working with dentists. You liked doing marketing for them. They valued you. They didn't negotiate too much on price. That could be one way that you find your target customers. Another way is just to look up something like digital marketing services for blank. And then you can see, okay, well, it looks like maybe in another state or another country, digital marketing agencies are viable by catering to this specific market, but it looks like in my area, there's nobody doing that. So you can just replicate that. So one of those is law firms, for example. Doing digital marketing, running a digital agency dedicated to law firms is a very viable niche if it's not oversaturated. And you're going to be way more profitable than generic digital marketing agencies that are out there. So idea 2 might be tech entrepreneurs. Okay, maybe you're a tech entrepreneur yourself, you have some background in this, maybe you've had some success with clients in the past, or maybe it's just something that interests you and you feel like you could provide a lot of value. That would be one place to start. Now, another thing that you may find, and I'll talk a little bit about this later, but basically it's the idea that the more specialized that you are and the more narrow your niche, what ends up happening is there's a direction you tend to go, which is rather than catering to the end customer like a dentist, you end up servicing the agencies, the larger agencies, with your specialty. So for example, maybe the agency doesn't have somebody with 8 years of experience with Facebook advertising in the B2B space. Well, what they might do is hire you as a subcontractor or hire your agency as a subcontracting agency. So your target customer actually ends up becoming the agency. This can be great if this is a relationship that you like, because it means that there's a lot of repeat business. On the other hand, they're going to mark up your prices, which means they can only pay you so much. So it's up to you whether you want to own the customer relationship or you just want to work with the agencies. And one of the driving factors behind that is the degree to which you specialize in something particularly like the service offered. If you're specializing in just Bing ads, for example, that's something that's easier to sell to an agency than perhaps to an end customer. Because when you're catering to the end customer, like a dentist, they're probably going to want to work with just kind of one marketing consultant. And what that means is that you may need to provide everything. You may need to provide the SEO, the PPC, perhaps even the direct mail, some of the non-digital marketing deliverables. So if you're taking the direction of focusing on a particular target customer, there are a few things you need to consider. One is that going with a narrow target customer group is the right direction, but the problem is you may pick a narrow target customer group that just isn't big enough. So for example, maybe Chinese medicine companies in Wyoming. Maybe there's 3. I don't know, but the group is just too small. And the way you validate size, the easiest way I find, is to pretend that you're creating an advertising campaign in LinkedIn. And then what LinkedIn will do is it'll tell you how many people are in that industry. Or you can put in certain criteria, like how many people are CFOs at companies that are above 50 people, something like that. So figuring out how big they are. The other key component is how much they can actually afford to pay you. So for example, restaurants. Lots of restaurants need digital marketing services. They need websites, they need menus, etc. But it's not really, they can't really afford to pay you a lot of money in most cases, unless you pick a narrow and you're going to say, okay, we're only going to do fast food restaurants or restaurants that are a certain size. So even though they have a need for what you sell, it doesn't mean they have the capacity to pay you as much as you want to. So that's going to stunt your growth opportunities. So what we're going to do here is validate whether our target customer choice is going to be realistic in terms of sizing. So I'm just going to put in something here like United Kingdom. And then we're going to narrow the audience. And what you can see is the target audience size on the right here. And maybe you're already familiar with running LinkedIn ads, but the estimates are on the right here. And I'm going to go down to audience attributes, and I'm going to choose company. And let's take a look here. Company industries. So we might want to go with an industry like energy and mining. Okay, so maybe you're the specialist in websites, cold email for the mining and metals industry. Okay, so this is 62,000 people in the United Kingdom that fit in this industry. So what you may want to do is make some decisions, right? You only need so many customers. When you're running a professional service, you don't really need a lot of clients to have a viable business. So what I would probably do in this case is start narrowing it down and talking to people in the mining industry to kind of figure out, well, what are their needs? Do they really need a lot of digital marketing, or is most of their marketing just done at conferences and trade shows and things like that? So that's some various ways that you would validate. Now, 62,000 is pretty large, so what you might decide is let's narrow this further and let's just focus on, maybe ones that have more than 50 people. Because if they have more than 50 people, they probably have enough money to be able to pay you a few $1,000s per month for a retainer or something like that. So that's just one way you can validate. You can use Facebook advertising similarly. It's just that with Facebook advertising, you often don't get as much in terms of business-to-business data. So for example, when I was targeting veterinarians, I was able to get 10 times as many veterinarians on LinkedIn as I could on Facebook, because Facebook, people's job titles and stuff are just not as up to date. Now, Facebook does have a larger database overall. More people are on Facebook, and that's great if you're doing consumer marketing. But with business to business, you run into some limitations. Okay, so going back to our workbook here, one specialty is the target customer. Now, even if you decide that your specialty is not by target customer, that it's going to be something by like problem solve, you still have to make a choice about a target customer. It just might be a bit broader, but every marketer basically needs to make the strategic decision of we're going to focus on these types of customers and not everyone else. So just keep that in mind. You'll have to make that decision at some point. All right, but if your focus is specialization, well, in this brainstorming session, let's just kind of go through all the different variations that we can do here. So you might put in something like problem that you solve is marketing automation issues. So you may realize that most people, when they do marketing automation, are just doing these very rudimentary drip campaigns based on time. So maybe you come in and you say, hey, I'm going to fix your marketing automation so that it's based on trigger events that customers take in your product or free trial people take in your product instead of just doing the boring drip campaigns that everybody else does. Or another problem you might fix is something like poor quality leads. Only a tiny percentage of leads that marketing departments generate actually end up becoming closing customers. So maybe you come in and you fix that. And you say, listen, even though your cost per lead is low, your customer acquisition cost is too high. So what I can do is I can take the same budget that you're spending right now, or a fraction of it, get you more customers than you're currently getting with the same budget. Here's my methodology. Let's go to town. Okay, maybe you want to specialize by services offered. So for example, you can choose to specialize in Facebook ads, or you can get even narrower than that. You can say, we only do business-to-business Facebook ads. That'd be an interesting niche, right? Because a lot of Facebook advertising is business-to-consumer, things like e-commerce, etc. Or you can pick a niche that's difficult. So for example, with Facebook ads, it's very complicated to do things like healthcare marketing because it's regulated. There's a lot of restrictions that Facebook puts on it. Well, if you're the specialist in that, you're more efficient. And you can kind of sort out all those details and sell yourself as a specialist. Or you could go broader and you could say, you know what? Idea 2 is I want to do Facebook marketing at large. I want to do the organic posts. I want to do the community building. I want to reach out to the influencers in the Facebook groups. I want to be the go-to person for Facebook marketing, not just advertising. Or maybe just organic. Or you could say, I'm going to specialize in social media automation. Okay, so maybe not just Facebook, maybe also LinkedIn, maybe Twitter. Maybe YouTube, etc. All right, idea 4 is that you go broader. Okay, so the services that you offer, business-to-business digital marketing. And then you might find, well, there's a lot of competitors in that space. I'm able to get a little bit of a premium price, but not much. So I'm going to go narrower. I'm going to say I'm business-to-business digital marketing for professional service firms. Okay, and you might have a viable business there, but you find, there's quite a bit of a difference between a law firm and an architectural firm. So, you know what? I'm only going to focus on law firms. I am the go-to agency for business-to-business digital marketing for law firms. And I can tell you that'd be a very profitable niche to play in. Okay, and the last version we have here is to specialize by business model. And a good position to be in is a monthly retainer. I mentioned before that customer captivity is the big competitive advantage with professional services. People don't like to leave their professionals because of the high switching costs. So a monthly retainer is a great model to operate within. You might charge, say, $3,000 a month for recurring marketing services, something like that. But that's going to be fairly common in digital marketing. So what you might want to do is come up with a pay per performance. So for example, cost per lead, cost per acquisition, cost for customer acquisition. What you might do is some sort of hybrid model where it's like, there's a monthly retainer, but we also want to align incentives. So what we're also going to do is offer, we want a commission on every lead that comes in. So while our retainer is a bit low, we know we can get performance. So we're going to hybridize the compensation. Okay. Idea 3 here is to kind of do a hybrid between you're selling a service and you're selling a product. So software as a service, for example, is basically a combination of selling a monthly product, but you also offer the service, which is kind of the customer success, the ongoing support, etc., like that. So if you've created some sort of product that helps automate things or improves the efficiency of the services you render, you could kind of package your services along with the product and have sort of a SaaS digital consulting hybrid. All right, so these are 4 different specializations. Now, I want you to keep in mind that you can combine them. And you can say, okay, we're going to specialize in, for example, dentists. And what we do is we do marketing automation. We fix, no, I'm not going to do that. We fix the problem of poor quality leads. And the way we do that is with Facebook marketing. And we do a CPL model. So in theory, you could do a super narrow specialization like this. And one thing that I want to say is that when you start specializing in these, the problem solved or the service, the more narrow you get into these, I would say that as a general rule, the more likely it is that your target customer is going to become the agencies. The reason being that when you own the customer relationship, like with the tech entrepreneurs, with the dentists, they tend to want somebody that's going to have broader abilities. You're going to be pushed in the direction of being an advisor, and that's going to be much more than just Facebook advertising, for example. But if you really want to be narrow and say, this is all I want to do, I just want to keep repeating the same service over and over, which is great, because that means what you can do is train other people to do your job for you, and you can kind of build that pyramid structure that's so popular in the consulting world. But ultimately, your customers then are more likely to be agencies, because they're able to offer the broad spectrum of marketing consulting to the end customer, and then you can just focus on repeatedly delivering the same service over and over.